Hey guys, welcome back to today's video. Today is Saturday, July 23rd, 2022, and today we are going to be talking about Donald Trump's bid for the presidency in 2024. Now, President Trump hasn't said explicitly that he is going to be running until this interview where he was questioned about the decision ahead of the 2024 election. He declares that he's already made a decision, that his mind is made up, and the only question remained is about when he will announce rather than if he will announce. Now, initially in this interview, and we can read through it, Donald Trump was a bit apprehensive about whether or not he was going to say declaratively that he was running for president. But it seems as if here that he was unwilling to keep it contained inside himself and said that the question isn't whether or not he is going to run, but whether or not he announces before the midterms or after the midterms. It says here, first of all, that Donald Trump believes he's very confident that if he decides to run, he will win. And this is nothing new for President Trump. He has been very clear from the very beginning of his 2016 presidential bid that whenever he is running for something, he intends to win it. He said the same thing in 2020. His confidence is something that you would typically see in someone expecting to run for president, and that is only further confirmed by this interview later down the line. He wouldn't disclose directly what he had decided, at least not at first, as the article describes. But then they say that he couldn't help himself, saying, quote, "I would say my big decision will whether I go before or after. You understand what that means?" And that tone there, they said, was conspiratorial, and thus they decided to directly say midterms. And then President Trump relaxed and said, "Do I go before or after? That will be my big decision." And we've seen a lot of consideration that President Trump wants to run for president now, that he wants to be this emerging leader in the Republican Party, re-emerging at least, and doing so before the midterm elections. Now, the reason why this is something that some Republicans are afraid of is because if he does announce his bid for president now on to his 2024 bid, and the focus will instead shift on President Trump rather than the Republican Party and the Democratic Party. You rarely ever see mainstream politicians run for president this early, and you have never seen a former president get this early in terms of planning their re-election bid unless they are an actual incumbent. There have been defeated incumbents before who have gone on to consider potentially running again, but have never actually done it in a full sense in modern political history. Donald Trump has been very clear from the beginning that he very much seems like he's going to run, and he has confirmed that in this recent interview. Now, I can't say that this is as direct as I would like from President Trump, but this is all the confirmation that I need. Going through President Trump's homepage, looking at his website, it has been very clear from the beginning, too, that he has no intention of removing himself from electoral politics. Now, Donald Trump said that if he lost to President Biden, he would never show his face in America again, that he would leave and completely step out of politics. But it's clear that he believes that he is going to run and he is going to win the presidency. So why would he do that? When you just take a scroll around his page, nothing has changed from the 2016 and 2020 elections. Unlike Hillary Clinton, unlike Mitt Romney, unlike John McCain, when they lost their presidential bids, their websites turned into things that were focused on their legacy, focused on what they are doing now, or redirected to a new site rather than continue a presidential campaign that did not work in the past election unless they were considering running again. And when you go to his shop even, I think this is a very big declaring point, you see so many pieces of merch that show you that he's making a lot of money. Donald Trump has fundraised over $100 million in the past year, and you can't tell me that's coming from someone who isn't planning to run for president. And it seems as if those on the inner circle have been in this questioning about whether or not they will be running for president, and they have been talking to close people to President Trump. And it says here, even from Ted Cruz, someone who believed that he would be a very big shoo-in for the 2024 nomination, citing his 2016 runner-up status, saying that if Trump was to announce, the GOP field would be cleared significantly. And you don't say things such as this unless you decide to run. And it's also very different than previous nominees. Should Mitt Romney have ran for president in 2016, he would not have cleared the field. Should John McCain have ran in 2012, he would not have cleared the field. Should Hillary Clinton have ran in 2020, she would also not have cleared the field. And it's a bit different because those are non-incumbents. Those are people who weren't able to win their race. But realistically speaking, you still have a failed nominee in President Donald Trump. But the Republican leaders are unwilling to get in the way of him running again. And it's a very similar story to what we saw in 2016, where the top Republicans did not want President Trump to win because they thought that he, or at the time, just Donald Trump, they did not want him to win the nomination because they thought he was unelectable. Now, obviously, they were proven wrong, but they were partially proven right again in 2020. And the GOP leaders are seemingly afraid that he's going to, one, take away energy from the midterm elections, which, to be fair, if he does it after the midterms, then okay, good on him. He won't be taking away midterm attention. Well, he is doing it right now, but not in the greatest sense. But also, he has an election loss to his name. But GOP leaders just simply won't step in the way. The Republican Party has an opportunity right now, an opportunity that could win them the presidency easily in 2024. With this consideration on the Democratic side that Joe Biden might not want to run for president again, there is this heavy idea that we will now enter into open primaries on both sides, which would benefit the GOP. And the reason why it would benefit them is because incumbents rarely lose. Remind yourself that President Trump was the first incumbent to lose since 1988. The first one in quite some time, meaning that looking ahead to 2024, while Joe Biden is unpopular now, Donald Trump was just as unpopular then, and you also have to realize that the presidency is something that can be easily won even with a low approval rating. You saw it with Obama being down in 2012. You saw it with Trump being down in 2016, down in 2020. Not winning, but came very, very close, 44,000 votes away out of over 150 million cast. I mean, what I find to be the most interesting about 2024 is that the Republican Party has a very good opportunity to prop up Governor Ron DeSantis to be the Republican nominee for president, and he isn't even on this list of considered nominees. Because President Trump, one, has been very much vocally saying that he would defeat Ron DeSantis in that spot, saying that Ron DeSantis would not have won his race without his endorsement, and saying Ron DeSantis would make a great vice presidential pick. Now, DeSantis honestly has a strong political future ahead of him. I think if DeSantis was to take on President Trump in 2024, he could very well win the nomination, Donald Trump being the initial frontrunner, but of course, there is still some consideration there that he does end up losing the nomination. But I also think that should DeSantis take the vice presidential spot, he could go on to win the presidency 4 years later. So all around, I think what we are finding from the Republican nomination spot is that the GOP has an opportunity. They have an opportunity to prevent a 2020 type of election loss. Now, currently speaking, the numbers are good for President Trump. He's up in Iowa, he's up in Ohio, he's up in practically every swing state that he lost in the last election. And if you just give him all of the states that he won in 2016 or even just 2020, you find that President Trump easily wins the election because he easily won it in 2016 by margin, at least for where we were. Now, if the current approval ratings and national numbers were to hold, Donald Trump probably could win more than 306 electoral votes. But the problem is Joe Biden's approval rating now probably isn't going to be the same approval rating as we go into 2024. And honestly speaking, I don't know if the American public is going to want a matchup similar to this one yet again. The Republican Party also has this problem where they are attacking Biden for old age, but I can't say that Donald Trump won't have a similar argument coming after him. Both of them will be pushing 80. In fact, Joe Biden older than 80 by the time the election comes around. So both of them will be on the older side. That argument about age and health will apply to both candidates as it did in 2020. And this idea of a youthful, revitalized voice for the GOP will fall into irrelevancy as Donald Trump claims the nomination from the very beginning. There is a lot of risk with renominating President Trump. I think that he is the favorite, but I don't think he's the most electable by far. I have been very clear. There are Republicans out there that I think will be president at one point in time. One of them being Governor Ron DeSantis. He has shown a significant portion of voters in Florida and across the nation that he can win in these swing states and can hold high levels of approval because he does what he wants to, and voters seem to like that. Now, to be fair, the nation is not Florida. If it was, then you would see a lot more competitiveness across the country. Most states won't vote for Ron DeSantis simply because he's a Republican, at least most Democratic states, obviously speaking. But there are some out there, such as Wisconsin, Michigan, Pennsylvania, that went to Biden that I could imagine going to Ron DeSantis that I might not be able to see them go to Donald Trump if Biden's approval rating does recover. Biden and Trump are going to be facing off against each other, and you are going to find yourself in a position where it's a lesser of two evils situation, but I don't know if that's going to actually benefit President Trump the way it did in 2016. Because the thing is, I think after 3 elections where people might be considering this to be a lesser of two evils circumstance, where neither candidate is super qualified for the race, you're not going to see as much enthusiasm as 2020, and I don't know if Donald Trump is going to be able to rely on that lack of enthusiasm to propel him over the finish line because Democrats aren't voting. Donald Trump is probably one of the best fundraisers for the Democratic Party that they ever could have hoped for. He's probably one of the few people that has consistently revitalized energy on the Democratic side whenever his name is invoked. It's not enough to win election, as Terry McAuliffe's campaign can tell you in the state of Virginia, the gubernatorial race, but it is enough to at least get fundraising out there, to get voters riled up, and to also solidify solid blue and likely blue districts that completely railed against President Trump in the 2020 election. There are obviously going to be some cases where Donald Trump's campaign is going to help. I think there are going to be some Rust Belt races where, should Ron DeSantis have been the nominee, maybe some more down ballot state Senate, state House, potentially other statewide positions are bogged down by not having President Trump on the ticket there. But I also think that as it stands currently, Trump is not more electable than DeSantis in the Rust Belt. Donald Trump has definitely shifted voters there. I think DeSantis definitely has room to fall. I'm not going to say that he's this unbeatable 2024 nominee. I would caution anyone from really thinking that anyone is beatable on the presidential level. Hillary Clinton in 2013 and 2014 was highly regarded as this unbeatable presidential candidate. It was a near certainty that she was in fact going to win the nomination and win the presidency. So I think that is something to take into consideration. Ron DeSantis definitely can fall from this high level of grace, high level of consideration for 2024. So definitely want to keep that in mind. But I will say that there are definitely some areas where I think President Trump could outperform Ron DeSantis and other areas where Ron DeSantis could also outperform him. It really just depends on where you're looking at across the nation. Nothing super tremendous. I don't think that it's going to be a true test about whether or not one can win. It's a question about how much you can win by, what you can do in the Senate elections, what you can do in the House elections, and what you can do with an electoral mandate with someone who is a new voice for the GOP rather than an old one. So President Trump seems like he's going to be announcing potentially before the midterms. I don't think that is the right move either. I know that President Trump is going to be running. I would entirely bet on it. Every single thing has been indicating that Trump will be running for president again. He has gone on a full tour over the past year. In fact, enough so that this Democratic group is now suing the Federal Election Commission for not creating a commission to watch over President Trump, despite President Trump acting like a 2024 nominee. And I honestly think that this lawsuit is correct in the sense that they are alleging that President Trump is putting up a guise over his 2024 bid rather than officially declare it, going through the Save America PAC, and thus he can practically do whatever he wants. And that is true. But the Federal Election Commission, I don't know if they have the authority or are required to go after someone who has a guise of a 2024 bid. Maybe this is a way of subverting the Federal Election Commission for President Trump, but he's gone through them twice, and I can't say that this is something that I think is as big of a deal as it might be made out to be. At the end of the day, President Trump has made it very clear that he intends to run. He has confirmed it in this recent interview and said the big question isn't if he's going to run, he's already made that decision, but rather when he's going to announce his bid. But I mean, looking at it from a true standpoint, I don't know if that lawsuit against President Trump really is going to have as much merit as we might think. And also, even if he is going to be viewed over as a 2024 presidential contender, that honestly isn't going to change much. Because again, as he did in 2016 and 2020, he went about these campaigns the same exact way, and it looks like he's repeating his efforts in 2024, because maybe he thinks the 2020 election was actually stolen, and that repeating what he did 4 years ago, or at least 4 years from the November 2024 election, will be able to carry him to victory this upcoming presidential election. So a lot of this depends on Biden's approval rating. A lot of this depends on President Trump and where he stands in 2024. I think that he has a good shot at the presidency, but I also think that Joe Biden does as well. I know in my recent maps, I've had Donald Trump over Joe Biden. And again, as it stands currently, I would stand by that. I do think that if we were to put up a matchup against the two together, there would be enough remorseful Trump to Biden voters that they move back towards President Trump. The same way there were remorseful Obama-Trump voters that moved back to Biden. The question is for Republicans and Democrats, is Trump going to be able to tap into this in 2024? And is Biden's approval rating going to remain as abysmally low as it is today? That's an answer that is only going to be answered officially. That's a question that's only going to be answered officially in 2024. Democrats need to do a lot in terms of changing the public narrative on Biden's position, on Biden's approval, on Biden's image. They did correctly, effectively during the DNC. I want you to take a look at Biden's favorability polls before and after the DNC. It went from being down 7 to up 8 in just about 2 weeks. That only happens with mainstream messaging of building this positive image of Biden, building this positive image of what he did under Obama's legacy and what he was going to do under the presidential spot. And that's exactly what Democrats need to do ahead of 2024. If they want any chance at winning the presidency, they need to recover his approval rating. I will say that Biden can be disapproved of on election day and win, a very similar way that Trump was disapproved of in 2016 and won, disapproved of by 8 points in 2020 and almost won. It's not impossible to win. Obama was down on election day and still won the election. So definitely does depend by candidate and national circumstance, but a lot needs to change in favor of the Democratic Party if they want to win. And right now, Donald Trump is probably the favorite over President Biden, and Donald Trump very clearly has established that he will be running for president in 2024, so we should treat him as a candidate moving forward. So thank you guys so much for watching this video. Make sure to comment down suggestions below. Subscribe on the left if you haven't already, and check out the Instagram and Twitter. At the bottom left of the screen, there's also a Discord server for you to go ahead and join. On the screen, there's a video you can watch, and then a playlist for my 2024 election analysis videos. Again, thank you guys so much for watching, and I will see you all later today.